It was a typical Friday night, and my wife and I were winding down after a long week. The house was enveloped in a serene silence, the kind that only comes after a day full of noise and activity. We had just finished watching a movie, something light to take our minds off the daily grind, and were now heading upstairs to our bedroom. The dim lights cast soft, comforting shadows on the walls, and the gentle hum of our ceiling fan provided a soothing background noise. It felt like a cocoon of safety and normalcy. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves outside and the occasional distant bark of a neighbor's dog, but inside our home, everything was calm and secure. As I pulled back the covers and slipped into bed, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. It was subtle, like an itch you can't quite scratch, but it was there. Recent news reports had been filled with stories about a local serial killer, a deranged individual who had been terrorizing our community. It was the kind of story that makes you double-check your locks and look over your shoulder a little more often. My wife, sensing my tension, gave me a reassuring smile as she settled in beside me. "Everything's fine," she murmured, her voice a gentle lullaby. I nodded, trying to convince myself she was right. The logical part of my brain knew the chances of anything happening to us were slim, but the darkness as a way of playing tricks on your mind. As we lay there, the quietness of the house wrapped around us like a blanket. I tried to push away the thoughts of the killer and focus on the safety of our home. Little did I know, that sense of security was about to be shattered in a way I could never have imagined. Just as I was beginning to drift off, a jarring sound shattered the silence. The phone ringing. It was an unusual hour for a call, especially on our landline. My heart skipped a beat, and I could feel the blood rushing in my ears as I reached for my cell phone on the nightstand. A glow from the screen illuminated the dark room, and my eyes widened in shock as I read the caller ID. Home landline. Cold chill ran down my spine. Our landline was downstairs, and neither my wife nor I had used it in ages. Panic set in immediately. My mind raced through a series of terrifying scenarios. Had someone broken into our house? Was this a sick game by a deranged intruder? Recent news of the local serial killer flashed through my mind. I envisioned a twisted individual lurking in the shadows, using our phone to taunt us before making their move. I glanced at my wife, who was now fully awake and staring at me with wide, fearful eyes. I could see the questions in her gaze, mirroring my own dread. Who could be calling us from inside our own home at this hour? 1,000 thoughts crowded my mind. Should I answer the call? Should we stay quiet and hope the intruder leaves? Should I go downstairs and confront whoever, or whatever, was there? Every second felt like an eternity as I weighed our options, my heart pounding in my chest. In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. We were not alone, and our night of peace had just turned into a living nightmare. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands and calm the racing thoughts in my mind. I leaned over to my wife and whispered, "Someone's calling us from the landline downstairs." Her eyes widened even further, and I could see the fear taking hold. I put a finger to my lips, signaling her to stay quiet, and tried to project an air of calm I didn't feel. "We need to think," I murmured as quietly as I could. "We have to figure out what to do." First, I grabbed the baseball bat we kept under the bed for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I handed my wife her phone and mouthed, "All 911 if anything happens." She nodded, hands trembling as she clutched the phone. We considered our options. The windows upstairs were too high to escape from safely, and climbing down the drain pipe seemed risky. Locking ourselves in the bathroom or a closet might buy us time, but it wouldn't stop someone determined to get in. The thought of waiting helplessly for whatever was downstairs to come to us was unbearable. I glanced at the door leading to the hallway and then back at my wife. "I'm going to check downstairs," I whispered. She grabbed my arm, her eyes pleading with me not to go, but I knew we couldn't just sit and wait. I had to know what we were dealing with. "I'll be careful. Promise. Stay here and keep your phone ready. If you hear anything, call the police." With that, I slowly opened the bedroom door, the hinges creaking loudly in the otherwise silent house. Every step down the hallway felt like walking through molasses, each creak of the floorboards magnified by the tension. I gripped the bat tightly, my knuckles white, and took another deep breath. Reaching the top of the stairs, I paused, straining to hear any sound from below. The house was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the kitchen clock. I started down the stairs, one step at a time, my heart pounding louder with each movement. As I descended into the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The shadows seemed to shift and move, and every small noise made my breath catch in my throat. I reached the bottom of the stairs and turned towards the living room, bat at the ready. Phone was still off the hook, lying on the coffee table, but there was no sign of an intruder. I scanned the room, every corner, every shadow, but nothing seemed out of place. Despite the apparent emptiness, the air felt thick with an oppressive sense of dread. I could feel eyes on me, unseen but undeniable. Holding my breath, I moved to check the kitchen and the back door, praying I wouldn't find anything, or anyone, waiting in the dark. With the baseball bat gripped firmly in my hand, I took a deep breath, gathering what little courage I had left. My wife's terrified face flashed through my mind, and I knew I had to protect us both. I couldn't let fear paralyze me now. I started down the stairs, each step slow and deliberate. The old wooden steps creaked under my weight, each sound magnified in the oppressive silence of the house. My heart pounded in my chest, echoing the rhythm of my cautious descent. Every shadow seemed to flicker with menace, and the darkness felt almost alive. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw the landline phone off the hook, its receiver lying on the coffee table. My initial fear spiked again, but as I scanned the room, there was no sign of anyone. The living room was just as we had left it, and for a brief moment, a wave of relief washed over me. But that relief was short-lived. Just as I was about to turn back to the stairs, I heard a noise from the kitchen, an unmistakable sound of something being knocked over. My heart leapt into my throat as I tightened my grip on the bat and moved toward the kitchen. The tension was unbearable. Each step felt like an eternity. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid, as I approached the doorway to the kitchen. I paused, trying to listen for any further sounds, but the house had fallen eerily silent again. With a swift motion, I stepped into the kitchen, brandishing the bat. The room was dimly lit by the light from the refrigerator, casting long shadows across the floor. I scanned every corner, every hiding spot, saw no one. Then, I noticed the source of the noise, a pot that had fallen off the counter, rolling slowly to a stop. Before I could fully process what I was seeing, I heard another noise, this time from the back of the house. It was a soft, almost imperceptible shuffle, like footsteps trying to remain undetected. My stomach churned with a new wave of dread. Whoever was here, they were trying to avoid being found. I moved cautiously towards the back door, my senses on high alert. The air felt thick, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. As I reached the door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. My heart raced even faster. If that was possible, someone had been inside, and they might still be here. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, stepping outside into the cool night air. The backyard was still and quiet, bathed in the pale light of the moon. I scanned the area, bat at the ready, but saw no movement. The sense of being watched lingered, an oppressive weight on my shoulders. Just as I was about to turn back inside, I heard a rustling in the bushes near the fence. My grip tightened on the bat, ready to confront whatever or whoever it was. I took a step towards the sound, my heart pounding in my ears, prepared for the worst. With the bat poised and my nerves stretched to the breaking point, I stepped closer to the rustling bushes. I was ready to confront an intruder, but to my surprise, a small, familiar figure darted out. It was our neighbor's cat, Whiskers, who often wandered into our yard. My breath caught in my throat as the cat brushed past my leg and disappeared into the night. I let out a shaky sigh of relief, lowering the bat. The immediate threat seemed to have dissipated. Maybe the cat had knocked over the pot in the kitchen and pushed the door ajar. I tried to convince myself that it was all a series of coincidences, but deep down, I knew something still felt off. I returned to the kitchen, trying to shake off the lingering dread. My wife was waiting at the top of the stairs, her face pale with worry. "It was just the cat," I called up softly. She visibly relaxed, but I could see that the fear hadn't completely left her eyes. Determined to put the night behind us, I began to check the locks on the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. That's when I noticed it. Subtle, almost imperceptible detail. One of the windows in the living room was slightly open, just enough to let in a draft. We always kept our windows locked, especially at night. A chill ran down my spine as I inspected the window closer. The latch had been tampered with, scratches around it indicating someone had tried to force it open. My mind raced back to the phone call, the sense of being watched and the feeling that someone had been in our home. I tried to dismiss it, but the evidence was there, staring me in the face. Someone had been inside, and they had left just enough of a trace to let us know. My wife joined me, her eyes widening as she saw the window. We exchanged a look of shared fear and realization. We spent the rest of the night on edge, jumping at every creak and groan of the house. Sleep was out of the question. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, and every sound was a potential danger. The safety and security we once felt in our home had been shattered. In the days that followed, we installed new locks, added security cameras, and took every precaution to protect ourselves. The lingering fear never completely went away. Every night, as we lay in bed, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense that the intruder might return. Even now, the memory of that night haunts us. The quiet of our home, once comforting, now feels like a prelude to something sinister. We live with the knowledge that our sanctuary was violated, and that the shadow of fear will always be with us.